Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I will be joined by Kevin Graham. I've just nipped in a little bit early to make sure that we don't get anybody saying, "Why are you late?" Kevin Graham, how are you, my friend?
Not too bad, Paul. Not too bad. Sorry I was a bit late there, but there we go. I'm here now.
Listen, you weren't really, because you stood up when I was basically doing it myself again today, Kevin. You thought to yourself, I'll jump in there and save your bacon. And I'm glad you did, because there's plenty to talk about. Even though you were on Monday, there is plenty to talk about, because we've got the Champions League group squad list. We've got Dundee coming up on the weekend and plenty more besides. So we're going to be talking about all of that. And of course, the international football that has happened between Monday and Wednesday, Kev. So we're going to be talking about all of that. But before we get started, I have a jersey behind me. It's a jersey that was given to us for the Sell the Jerseys initiative, which is raising cash for wee Jamie Tierney, who is suffering from Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a condition where there is no cure, but we are able to pay for, him to be sent away for treatment to the States and places like that, Kev. So we're trying our hardest to raise some cash, and the Celtic fans are helping us do that. This is one of the jerseys that came in. And I remember the jersey well, Kev, but at the top of the show, I'm going to ask the question, what do you think of the top? Who does it remind you of? And is there a particular game? Is there a particular Celtic game that reminds you of, that particular jersey? So have a wee think about it, Kev, and we'll be dipping into the comment section as the show goes on. I see you're wearing a retro Umbro top. All you have missing there is a Celtic crest, and that would be a 1980s classic, which reminds me of the likes of George McCluskey and Tommy Burns.
Yes. It's shiny material, eh? I think when you say McCluskey and Burns, I'll remember Burns, especially. I think it was the 80 Cup final with the league champions on the back. It was it the 80 Cup? I can't remember, but I remember that. But this is an Umbro cash-in remake. This is not an original.
But it is Umbro. It's not
It is
being made
Umbro.
in somebody's garage somewhere in
No, it is
Easterhouse.
definitely Umbro. Yes.
Right. Well, that's fine. Not that people have running businesses at the garage in Easterhouse is a bad thing, Kev. But obviously, it's difficult sometimes to know what's real and what's fake.
When you've got to get your teenagers Stone Thailand stuff for somewhere, eh? I mean,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
what's wrong with getting it for a wee guy in Easterhouse?
What we've done, Kev, with our merchandise, of course, is we've had it made bespoke, redesigned it, we've had it made, sent over, embroidered, etc. So I know the whole process is very difficult.
And it's been copied for a wee guy in Easterhouse.
Probably, aye. I've not seen the copies yet, but no doubt that will be copied eventually. But yeah, there's loads to talk about, and I want to go through the entire squad list, but asking the questions as we go along. What does it mean for certain players who have been included and those who have been omitted? Have a think about this jersey. What player does it remind you of? Does it remind you of a particular game? And I'm going to throw something else into the mix, Kev. Does it remind you of a particular time in your life? A moment? Because that's why I've used it, because it does remind me of something, and that will all become clear. We'll also be bringing in the comments from our good listeners. I will say that no, there is no priority list. It's all down to the quality of the comments. So if anybody goes on another site and says, "Oh, they never bring up a comment," up your game. Right, here we go. Stephen Sloan. You are on the show quite a lot, Stephen. Taylor has been our number one left back for 4 years. Let that sink in. 4 years. And Bernabe is that bad, he can't even make the Champions League squad. How hard is it to find a quality left back? Right, we're running with the tagline, Kev, not to sensationalise it. Has Rodgers been backed enough in time for the Champions League? The reason we're talking about that, of course, is that all the business has been done. And we go into that Champions League having just announced the squad. We had a massive sale in relation to Jota. We had a decent, sizable sale in relation to Carl Starfelt. And I think we got a wee bit of compo for Ange Postecoglou. We made a profit in the transfer window of something like £14 million. If you add the compo on top, it could be closer to 20. Have we backed the gaffer enough? Question number one.
No, and we'll never back any Celtic gaffer enough to make any inroads in the Champions League whatsoever. I've come round to actually believing that now, and I'm not going to give the board too much criticism, even though I would have done it last year. I think there's a big, massive elephant in this room. It's called Scottish football. And everybody has a look at Ajax, everybody has a look at Porto, everybody has a look at Benfica and clubs like that. They didn't need to offer Motherwell away and Ross County away. They didn't need to offer playing the same teams 4 times a year. They can offer like better weather. Maybe no more money, but some folk will know that they are interested in money. But when it comes to, can offer better leagues, they can offer
Lifestyle,
better
climate,
lifestyle,
yep.
better lifestyle, can offer the whole shebang. And I think it's very, very difficult for Celtic to attract the next level type player, which we all wanted, which we were all shouting for at the end of the season. In saying that, I think the squad management's been terrible.
I'd agree with that.
When you actually see the list. So on one hand, I'm actually saying he hasn't been back, but there's a reason for that. On the other hand, I'm saying the club really has to look at itself. The fact is, we're going in with Greg Taylor as the only recognised left back into a European campaign. Now, Scales can probably play there. That's what they're probably looking at. We're going into a season where we're going into our Champions League group stage as well, with Scott Bain as your backup goalkeeper.
Yeah,
that shouldn't happen. There's been poor squad management here by Brendan and the recruitment team, and I think when you see the 25, it's down to that. But I do have some sympathy for them. That next level of player is going to be extremely difficult to come here. I mean, I remember we were talking at the start. Yeah, that's we were going like, I will smash transfer records, and I was getting shouted at, going, "No, we'll be nowhere near transfer records. We'll be nowhere near spending our £9 million because the game's changed, and it's very, very difficult to attract people like that to Scottish football. But you can make a decent fist of European football if you get your squad management right, and I didn't think we've got the squad management right."
I think the points you make are valid, Kevin, and they're not just knee-jerk, because if you go right back to 2017, when we started a Celtic State of Mind, the views have not changed a great deal, in actual fact, from the time of Brendan Rodgers' first tenure. You look at squad management, and I think Ange Postecoglou also has to take his fair share of blame, because he was the man at the helm whereby the squad became really bloated. It actually became really bloated. We went from a position whereby we needed bodies in the building, i.e., for the qualifiers in season number 1, to the point where we had a bloated squad. And what I mean by that is we've got guys like Kobayashi, for example, who's not in the squad here. And you think to yourself, well, he's using a jersey, he's using a squad number, he's earning a wage, he's not playing. And there's quite a lot of players like that. Haksabanovic has just left the building. I was talking yesterday, a lot of Celtic fans disagreed with what I said, which is fine, that's what it's all about. I was talking yesterday about Haksabanovic. He's a player who, Brendan Rodgers has had time to look at him during the pre-season, Kev. He's looked at him in maybe 4 competitive games this season. He's thought, this guy's not to it. He's not to it. So at what point should that have been identified? Well, it probably should have been identified last season. Kobayashi is the same. I was surprised, although glad, that Iwata made the squad. You pinpoint the left-back position and the goalkeeper position. We've been banging on about it since day 1 of pre-season. These are 2 priority positions. And I thought we had done some brilliant work in having a list of examples, almost like a back catalogue of examples that you can roll out and say to a young player who's at an academy, be that academy, be maybe Man City or PSG, for example, to use 2 examples, right? And you can say to them, here's the case study of Jeremy Frimpong. This is what happened to Jeremy Frimpong, a player we brought in, I think, for 300, 400 grand. And this is what happened. He came in, he was part of a successful team, he got competitive football, we put him on a Champions League stage, and he got a £11.5 million move, right? And now they're looking at that secondary move to an even bigger team in a bigger league, right? And then you bring in the example of Odsonne-Edouard, 19 years of age, playing academy football for PSG, a spell out on loan to Toulouse. This is what happened when he came to Celtic. So I think there's enough examples like that. But as you say, there's a lot of other examples of situations where it's going against you. The very fact that we have the default of playing football in Scotland. But also, I think there's another contributing factor in that there's another massive big vulture that's circling the transfer windows now. There was English football was the only league that was spending money, Kev. I know we've got the big leagues, but a lot of them weren't spending big money. English football was. Now we've got Saudi Arabian money coming into the equation, so a lot of people are hedging their bets because they want to leave it to the very last minute before they figure out whether or not they're going to get a bid from elsewhere. And I mean that because if a player like Jack Hendry, with all due respect, can go over there and become a multi-millionaire overnight, then a lot of players of that ilk will be hedging their bets. I think my biggest concern is that we're going into the Champions League and we will look through the squad. We'll be looking at areas that we think are maybe weak areas of concern. And I'm thinking, well, we've made the ballpark of 14 million. I know that the Jota deal, you could obviously look at it two different ways. We've seen now the papers from Benfica's accounts showing that, they made quite a bit of money from Jota, as was their right. They've done a good deal on him. And you look at the 14 million, Kev, and you think 14 million gave us Jota and Carter Vickers. So you look at this transfer window and you think all the business that we've done, throw in two players of that level, of that standard, a goalkeeper and a left back, and you're sitting here, I'm not going to say fully confident because you're still entering a competition that is the most competitive in European football, possibly world football, but you're feeling better about it because they're the two main areas of concern, aren't they?
They are the two main areas of concern. As I says on Monday, my Joe Hart concern is the fact that he's in his last year of his contract. And my Joe Hart concern in Europe is the fact is if he's injured, he's one broken finger away from Scott Bain playing against Atletico Madrid.
Pulled muscle.
Exactly. That's where we are. Where a pulled muscle, a Sertanio for Scales playing at left back against Feyenoord away from home, and that is, for me, that is a poor squad management. I mean, you look at Jota. We may as well call Jota what it was. We basically spent Jota cost us £13 million by the time you actually add on the sell-on fee to Benfica. So by the time you add that up, that was a £13 million that Jota actually cost us. And he will go into great things. Carter Vickers at 6 as well. And understand the level that you play are there. But you're still buying a level of player at £6 million who Morris Jens going for 8 million. Now, would anybody in the comments on Acsom would actually want to spend £8 million on Morris Jens after what we saw last season? We're in a market that's a risk.
Kev, he looked like a £4 million defender to me.
So we're in a market that's a risk. Even if we go to the Jota level, which is 6 million, even if we go to the Cameron Carter Vickers, which is 6 million, what we need to get right is a squad management to make sure that a certain group of 25 players, a certain group of 18 players peak 18 months into their game or a year. What we're looking for is this squad to peak in a year's time to have another go at the Champions League. For them to progress enough this season to actually have a go. And this is where you can get lucky, you can actually get simple draws and get through, but we're only going to have our decent players for 18 to 24 months. So what you're looking for all your players to do is actually peak between that 12 to 18 month period for you to have a decent go in Europe. And that's what Celtic's model is going to be. You try to keep them together. Everybody talks about Rangers going to the Europa League final a couple of years back. I think that team was had been together for about 3 or 4 years by that point, and they got favourable draws. They didn't sell their top stars, and that's the reason why guys like Kent and that have left for nothing, because they didn't have a business model. That's the reason why they're probably trading insolvent, because like they sell a couple of players. The only one they've ever cashed in on is Bassey. And even then, that didn't work. He was found out to be a Durden horse back to Fulham. And the boy Patterson, the left back. But then again, I'll argue with Patterson, as Everton paid between £5 and £9 million for Patterson. Believe what depending on what output of the MSM that you actually believe. But Everton only paid that money because they had to look at Robertson and Tierney and went, if we let this guy play 50, 60 games for Rangers, he could be 25 million. So we'll just
Yeah.
spend that money there now. We'll buy potential there. And you know for a fact that the Celtic board, if we give Hatate a decent deal, and he's one at peaks over the next couple of months, he's gone next summer, because that's a 2-year up. That's the 2.5-year cycle. That's a 2-year cycle up for him. So then you need to replace him. It's the same way O'Reilly and that. So what we're actually looking for is the guys that we've brought in, like Odin Holm, guys like that, to actually peak between that 12 and 18-month period to give a decent shot in Europe. And that we should actually be sitting here in year 2, but we're not. We're sitting here at year 0 again because the manager left, and that's where we are. And there's nothing we can do about that.
You're talking about cycles, and I totally agree with you. And I go right back to Colin and I talking about the Champions League team we could have had if the cycle was the cycle's getting shorter, Kev. We used to talk about a 3-year cycle. You're now talking about an 18-month to 2-year cycle. So it's getting tighter every time. How long you can keep your top players. I don't think any of us expected Jota to leave when he did. You expected to have another season with Jota. And then what's key is that the recruitment has to be spot on, so that the new batch of players that come in, Kev, they then hit the ground running, they make an impact with the players that are peaking, and then that cycle keeps happening. If the recruitment is wrong or you sell a player too early, that's where the whole cycle starts to hit issues, I think. And if you look at last season's recruitment, for example, we've been given big plaudits to the recruitment team. I'm going to read through the players that came in last season, okay? This is Ange Postecoglou's second season. And what you're looking for is the guys that came in last season to be really part of the team now, Kev, to really be firing on all cylinders to the point where you're probably expecting bids for them in this pre-season to come, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the list of players. Now, Maeda, Carter Vickers and Jota, we know were already on loan. They were made permanent, so we'll put them to one side, right? Benjamin Siegrist, there's your goalkeeper replacement. Alexandro Bernabe came in for the left back. We then had the loan deal of Maurice Jens. Aaron Moy came in. Syed Haksabanovic, who I want to talk about a wee bit more. And people sometimes forget that we brought in Olivier Abulgar as well from Rubin Kazan on loan at the time. Yuki Kobayashi, he was there to try and solve the issue at centre-half. Alistair Johnson, Tomoki Awata and O. Now, all those names, Kev, and it comes down to a bit of opinion, but also, facts and figures. Out of all those players, who has been a success? That's season 2 under Ange Postecoglou. We're talking about squad management now. Of all those players, who do you think has been an unreserved success that nobody really could argue with?
AJ.
The
only one. And you could, if some of the guys who look at the stats bombs and stuff like that will maybe say, oh, has probably done what you expected them to, what expected them to do. Awata came in a couple of times and you thought he would have really kicked on this season, but the fact that he was left out of Ibrox, not even in the squad for Ibrox, is puzzling me, and he made the Champions League squad as well. So I really don't see what Rodgers is doing with that guy just now. But the rest of them, Siegrist has been a wasted wage. Bernabe is really, really struggling. I don't know for whatever reason that is. Who was the other ones there?
Kobayashi.
Haksabanovic is off.
Yep.
Kobayashi was basically brung in because Jens was basically brung in to replace Jens, and we let Jens go. And I still say that was a purely figures game. That was a numbers game. That he was going to be cheaper than trying to sign Maurice Jens. Look, second season wasn't too good, eh?
No, it wasn't when you look back on it.
When you actually look back, Abulgar was never fit at any point to actually make any sort of impression whatsoever. It's what I've said. Sometimes you get an impression that managers can say no to players. Mm-hmm. Managers can say no to players.
Absolutely, when presented by the recruitment team.
Aye, they can go, no. But sometimes they just do it to get numbers and they give us false hope that these guys could be absolutely great, and it doesn't really happen. I mean, I called Haksabanovic an imposter on Monday, but he's got ability. He has got ability, and that's been proven, that he has got ability. But it never worked for us. Abulgar, I didn't even ken where he is now. I don't even know where he is now. So it's strange, eh?
Well, if you go to that cycle, Kev, that you're talking about, a key part of that cycle is that 3 or 4 of your signings have to be a success every single year. So you look at that batch of players that we've came in, and again, I'm going to go through them, and you ask yourself, what was a success? The one I would add to your list is Moy. Moy was a success, but he's came and gone because he retired, right? So short-term success, right? But you're looking at a player, and you want that batch of players to be like Jota, Carter Vickers, Matt O'Reilly, Rio Atati, Diza Maida, guys who are really going to make an impact, Abada, Starfelt. And then you look at season 2, and we didn't have that batch of players because I think everybody in the comment section, don't want to talk for you, but let me know if you disagree, would say Alistair Johnson, unreserved, unmitigated success, right? Absolutely tremendous. Then you look at guys like Awat, you go, oh, he might still be a player. Oh, he's done okay, but he's not a first choice. Kobayashi, jury's out. Bernabe, jury's out. Segrist has been a flop. He's only played 2 games competitively. Haksabanovic, for whatever reason, Rodgers has shipped him out to Stoke. And I spoke about that yesterday. Maurice Jens and Abel got short-term fixes. So season 2, recruitment is now affecting season 3 going into this Champions League. And like you say, it does feel now, Kev, as though we're going in almost at ground zero because, we've not been able to do that kicking on process. You look at some of the guys that we're expecting to really kick on in the Champions League this season, and it is people like Matt O'Reilly. It is Kyogo Furuhashi. You are expecting Carter Vickers to star in the Champions League. Guys that came in season 1, who came in and they were successes straight off the bat. We didn't have the same percentage of players coming in season 2. Obviously, it's going to be up for debate in season 3 because we've not seen enough of them. But in order to make sure that we can progress, there's loads of moving parts. But if you think about it as twofold, the recruitment has to be spot on so that you've got 3 or 4 players who are really going to contribute. And like you say, the other ones that came the season or 2 before have to peak at that time. And then if you've got that collection of half a dozen players who complement the spine of your team alongside your McGregors and Joe Hart, etc., then you've got a chance. And I'm not saying to win a European competition, but to at least punch it our weight, Kev, because that's the biggest frustration. Like from last season, what's the biggest frustration from Europe? Well, it's not getting beat from Real Madrid. Of course it isn't. It's not being able to beat the team that at the very beginning of the competition, we would have said that's the team we want to take points from, Shakhtar Donetsk. So that is us punching what I would say at our weight, right? So I think that it is twofold if you want to break it down like that. And the recruitment last season wasn't good enough. So we give a lot of kudos to the recruitment team and to Ange Postecoglou. Like, the man's got the Midas touch. How can you say that he won the treble? But a lot of winning the treble was down to season 1 recruitment rather than season 2 recruitment. And now we're in season 3, and because we're not getting the kickoff or the kickback rather from season 2, we're sitting here with a Champions League squad and you're picking holes in it. And I think that's a massive issue. And we will go through the squad. I'm really, really keen to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Until about 12:15, I was going to be relying solely on the comments section until Kevin Graham saved my bacon. And Michael the Boy says, the old guard today. 6 and a bit years we've been doing this, Kev. Mainly ups, a couple of downs. Still enjoying it? Oh, you've gone silent. You've gone quiet. You've gone quiet. There we go. Just as you come back, I'll tell you what, we did it for 6 years and we still haven't mastered the technology. Are you back?
I'm back.
You're back. There we go.
I was replugging in my microphone. That's why I muted myself. I am still enjoying it. Who doesn't enjoy talking about Celtic?
This is what I say, Kev, to people. How can you talk about Celtic for an hour every day? And I'm like, well, most of the people in the comment section probably talk about Celtic for an hour a day at their work or at home or whatever it is. We just started doing it in front of a screen and getting the people involved in the comment section. And part of that community that we've built up is that we're doing an initiative this year. We've always done a charity drive every single season. This season it's Sell the Jerseys. What does this jersey remind you of? What game does it remind you of? What player does it remind you of? I'm going to come to you, Kev. We've been on the show for 25 minutes. Give me your thoughts. I'm going to bring some of the comments in during the show as well.
That jersey, Salzburg away, the day of the Scottish independence referendum, and Wakaso.
The reason I'm laughing is it's almost a carbon copy of what I'm going to say. The reason for it, Kev, is I remember walking through Stirling Centre when there used to be a Celtic shop in there. Remember the Celtic shop in there? And Russell, who worked in the shop, Russell, big shout out to him. What's his surname? Conway, I think. Celtic fan.
Russell Conway.
Yeah, Russell Conway used to work in there. And he was always good for the crack when you went in. I remember the jersey being in the window, and I went in and I was speaking to him this day. I was like, what do you think of that jersey? Because I like the idea, in International Week, of course, I do like the idea of some kind of Celtic tartan. I've always liked the Celtic tartan, Kev, right? And at the time, I wasn't a fan of this jersey. It's one of the ones that's kind of grown on me as time has progressed. The reason it's a pivotal one, and I'm going to be putting a new jersey up every day, obviously to push the initiative. Link is underneath the video as well. I got married the day of that game you just mentioned. That day, the 18th of September, I can't forget it because obviously it's going to be the anniversary on Monday. So I've got it all sorted, the card and the present and all that sorted, Kev, honest. Right, so that particular game was on the night of my wedding. And I remember being, again, in Stirling, the Glenbervie, and the game was ongoing. Wakaso scored that night, Kev, wearing this jersey on that particular occasion. And looking back on it, when I had to describe every Celtic jersey in 500 words or whatever, I tied this in with the independence campaign because I don't think it was a coincidence that we went tartan that year. Do you?
I don't think it was I don't know. Are we going to give the board credit of a coincidence? The fact that they wore it that night in Europe, I think a lot of folk made a big deal about that. Oh, they're wearing a tartan kit in Europe the day of the Scottish independence referendum. Like you, I wasn't getting married that day, but I was actually working at the referendum. I was working in a polling station at the referendum. So I was just getting text updates of the game. But that's what I can remember having a look at the YouTube thing when I can just remember Wakaso scoring. Scott Brune scored the other goal that night, eh?
He did, and he did the Bruni. Where is Wakaso now is obviously my next question, but please let me know your memories of the jersey. Has it aged well? And what are your memories of players that wore it or games it was worn in? Kevin and I, by absolute coincidence, I didn't set you up for this one, Kev, remember the exact same game. Wakaso, Mubarak Wakaso, is now 33 years of age, and he was last, in fact, he's still with Shenzhen, which I think is a Chinese club, isn't it? He was on loan last season, but Shenzhen is who he is currently playing with. They've got a 60,000-seater stadium. Wakaso, he was obviously on loan. He is another player that we signed from Rubin Kazan. Kev, there you go. We've been talking about a couple of the guys. Haksabanovic is a player I've been talking about this week, and some Celtic fans disagreed, as I said earlier on, and that's what it's all about. I was asked to describe a Haksabanovic, and I was asked my thoughts on how he will do when he goes to Stoke. And what I said was, here's the good points. Here's what I would say are the positives from what I've seen of Haksabanovic. But what became pretty clear to me, Kev, is the Haksabanovic I was describing was the player of last season. There's been a distinct change since Brendan Rodgers came in. Changing managers can do that. But I do think we've had a completely different change of shape since Rodgers has come in. And the wingers are being utilised differently. And I don't think it suited Haksabanovic. So he's off ski. Strangely enough, one thing that surprised me is his age. He's only 24. So when I was looking at that, I'm thinking, you talk about Turnbull as if he's still a fairly young player. Well, this player, Haksabanovic, is the same age as David Turnbull. I don't think he'll be back. I really don't. But I said to him, I think it's the Samaras situation. He's going to be a hero or he's going to be the other end of the scale. He's going to be the Samaras that you saw in a Man City jersey or the Samaras that you saw scoring 2 goals against Rangers for Celtic in New Year's fixture. What's your take on Haksabanovic, and will we see him back in a Celtic jersey?
I don't think we'll see him back in a Celtic jersey, and my take is he could have been a contender, but for whatever reason he decided not to be one. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think he suited Ange Postecoglou's Celtic as well. when Rodgers came back, and I'm remembering the high salon days of Rodgers and Tom Rogic in that 10 role, I'm going, he could play there. I went, he could actually play in that 10 role, eh? And any time that he appeared out wide, and he was still doing the old trying to cut inside and things like that. And you look back on last season when we wanted him to make a impression. League Cup final, bursting through on goal in the last minute, he missed a couple of sitters like that when he came on as a sub. It just didn't really work for him. The guy's got ability. Hopefully he finds a club where he's going to be the star man, because I've got a funny feeling that he needs to be the star man, and maybe a wet Tuesday night in Stoke is where he always dreamed to be. And he will be the star man in the Championship, but who knows? But as you say, he's 24. He's been playing professional football since he's been 16. First team professional football since he's been 16. So the lads had a lot of football, but I can't see him being back here now. I think that ship has sailed.
I get what you mean by him having to be the star player. His career trajectory has been on the upwards until he's went to what you would regard as a big club or a big league, right? So he actually made his debut at 15 in Sweden, right? He gets a big money move to West Ham at 18, Kev. Doesn't kick on. He finds himself going back to Sweden, Norrköping. He gets sold to Rubin Kazan for 5.4 million quid. So within 12 months, we got that player. And the only reason we got him for 1.7 was because of the situation with the registrations of Russian players, overseas Russian players. They were given the option to actually tear up their contracts. I think when you look at the comments made by Rubin Kazan at the time, Celtic have been very fair with the club, because there was a suggestion we might have got that player for now. We ended up signing him for £1.7 million. And of course, he was a bit part player. I mean, he wasn't a guy. I would need to check the stats. I don't think he started 3 games in a row, Kev, either under Ange or under Brendan Rodgers. Competitively, I don't think he started 3 games in a row. That shows the inconsistency. It seems as though he's a guy with technical ability, a lot of natural ability, but once he gets to that point where this is your platform, you're playing in the EFL, or you're playing in the EPL rather, or you're playing in the Champions League, it's almost as if, wait a minute, I prefer to be a big fish in a small pond rather than playing for the big teams or in the big leagues. So yeah, all the best to him. Hopefully it works out, because if it does, they'll sign him permanently. You made a comment there, could have been a contender. I only this week watched On the Waterfront for the first time, so that was well placed as well. We definitely don't prepare for these shows, Kev. You'd think that we did. Could have been a contender, but here I am, a bum. I don't know what that means. Tommy Rogic, still a free agent, by the way. You mentioned Tommy, still a free agent, could still do a job. All right, he is. He's only 30. Michael Ross has given us an answer to the tagline. Has Rodgers been backed enough in time for the Champions League? And Michael says no. Simple answer, no. Michael, the boy, comes in to say could have been backed for a left back and a striker for the Champions League, but it is what it is. We go with what we have. Yeah, we do. It just gets to that point, though, after the games, Kev, that we could bemoan the fact that we're without these players.
What I'm going to say, going back to the first comment earlier, I think he has been backed, but the squad management's been poor. But I think he has been backed. He has had money to spend. He knew the gig when he took it. He knew the level of player that we were looking at. He praised the recruitment team, what we were doing. He praised Mark Law and that. He knew exactly what he was getting. But it's been bad squad management that we haven't got a goalie and a left back.
No, you're right. It shouldn't happen. It absolutely shouldn't. Michael, you've been in, but here's another point from you. The board lack ambition in Europe. By the way, you're talking Kevin's language. He's been banging on about this for 6.5 years on Acsom. You just can't argue with that anymore. What more proof do we need? I was thinking about it the day I was in Glasgow. I was at Don Max, because Simon Donnelly, Jackie Max venue is where we're doing our upcoming gigs with Chris Sutton, and then another one at the end of October as well, which is already sold out. A few tickets left for Chris. And we were just in having a look at the seating plan and stuff like that. And I'm driving back through here thinking to myself, now that the dust has settled and we know what the Champions League squad looks like, Kev, and I'm thinking, initially I'm thinking, I don't think he's been sufficiently backed. You've brought this into the equation that it's about squad management. It then starts you looking at the recruitment last season, which wasn't good enough. The recruitment wasn't good enough last season. And I think you can look at that by saying, right, we needed to improve on the goalkeeper position, left back, and centre half this time last year. So we bring in Segrist, Kobayashi, and Bernabe, and those three players don't make the cut. And I think that speaks volumes. They're the three players that we brought in last season when we thought we needed to strengthen in those positions, and they don't make the Champions League cut. I think that speaks volumes for the recruitment last year. If we're going to give them praise, Kev, you've also got to point out the deficiencies. Patrick Harold, welcome back to the show. Afternoon, comrades. Thank God Celtic are back. Yes, competitive action, Kev. Last night, Scotland were playing. We've been talking about the tartan. We've been talking about the independence. I'm going to admit it. I lasted the first half. And I only watched it because I wanted to see how Callum McGregor played. And I thought he played all right in the first half, to be honest with you. He's up against a different quality of player. I remember when we did the Paul Lambert interview, it's on the channel, check it out on YouTube. Paul Lambert says to me that Bellingham's going to be one of the best players in the world. And I thought it was a lofty thing to say at the time. And then you watch him. I know he's playing Scotland, and obviously he's to do it and replicate it in the finals tournaments. He's 20 years of age, Kev, and he's played for Real Madrid, and he's a baller. He's got about 27 or 28 caps for England already. Incredible talent.
And remember, we all laughed when Birmingham City retired his squad number. When he left them to go to Borussia Dortmund, everybody was like, why are you retiring a squad number of a 16-year-old laddie? Well, that's the reason that they retired a squad number for a 16-year-old laddie. Oh, he was fantastic last night. Guess what I like about him as well? He's detestable as well. He's got a face that you would like to punch. But he's got that sort of wee bit of arrogance about him, eh?
He's detestable.
Him and Phil Foden, I wouldn't mind having a wee square go with any of them. There would be, Phil Foden's mom would probably batter me, tell you the truth. But that's, if you didn't ken the story about Phil Foden's mom fighting at the box.
I've seen footage of that, yeah. I've seen footage of it.
So, I'm quite glad that the England team's becoming a bit detestable again with guys like Declan Rice and Foden and Bellingham and that. But there's no denying the football ability, especially Bellingham. He's the elite level. He's in there with Mbappe and Haaland. He is that level, and he could be a swinging point for England in certain tournaments, or either that they'll just get continued getting beat at quarterfinals and semi-finals.
Don't you think though, Kev? Right, I love the image leading into the game with Andy Robertson and Harry Kane. They were talking about obviously their honours and all the rest of it, and Robertson's won the Champions League and everything. Every now and again, it becomes the Queen's Park, Andy Robertson, doesn't he? Every now and again, I see it. He's this top-level elite footballer, but every now and again, you're thinking, that's rotten. That's terrible. What happened there? And I saw that in the first half last night from Robertson as well. He's a player, though, Kev, that I think he's a shining example because he's an anomaly of a footballer. You know, he didn't come through the academies and do all that kind of stuff. But again, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, Jackie McNamara deserves a huge amount of credit, as does Simon Donnelly, for that, finding that player playing for Queen's Park, having been thrown in the scrap heap. At that time, he was playing part-time. We all know the story at that stage. James Love, hail from the Philippines. Hail to you as well. It's always great to know where the viewers are tuning in from. Tony Cassidy, good afternoon to you as well, sir. And we've got John Taggart. Is it the same John Taggart that used to play for Celtic? Evening, lads, from Perth, Australia. Looking forward to seeing the boys at the weekend. Yes, me as well. Double denim. Squad is looking decent in most areas, but concerns over a decent backup keeper and a left back. Any views on why Bernabe was left out of the squad? Well, let's start off with the defenders then, now that you bring it up, right? So Bernabe comes in, a fair old investment for a young left back coming over. A lot was made of the fact that he was the first Argentinian to play for Celtic, Kev. We heard all that chat. He comes in. We're at a stage now where he's had the settling in period, right? So everything that went wrong last season, you can say that's the settling in period. And there was a lot wrong, both on the park and off it. I think Bernabe is indisciplined. I think he's got a difficulty in taking instructions and actually sticking to a game plan. I see a player who's got undoubted technical ability, you know, in terms of skill, ball control, all that kind of side of the game, Kev, that a lot of people don't have, but they make up for it in other ways. But he just doesn't do what he's told. He can't stick to a game plan. I'm thinking Mad Dog Gravison under Gordon Strachan. He just did whatever he wanted, ran about in areas of the park that he was told not to go to. And I think Burnaby's like that on the pitch. That's before I even get to the off-the-pitch issues. So I think Rodgers has seen enough. I'm going to be honest with you. And I think that on merit, you've got a guy like Liam Scales, who was written off by me and others, who's come in for a few games, and he's stepped up, particularly at Ibrox. He's stepped up. And his attitude, I think, would be right. And Brendan Rodgers puts a lot of onus on that, as he definitely should. But strangely enough, on the UEFA website, Kev, Hatate is listed as a defender, and we know he can play left back as well. So there's a couple of options. I just hope we never get to the Hatate at left back option. But yeah, that for me is why Burnaby's been left out. He's been at the club long enough, Kev, to get the culture off the pitch, to settle in, to know what his role is in a team, and he's not disciplined enough to follow it through.
It seems that way. I wonder what the conversation was like, though, with Rodgers telling him, this is the reason that you're not in the Champions League squad. I wonder where his head is at. Is he the type of guy that will react and bounce back for that and go, no, I'm going to prove you wrong? Or is he the type of guy that's going to go away and sulk? I mean, that's great man management. Or is it being great management? I don't know. I do not know the guy's personality. Let's go a wee bit stereotypical here with South American personalities. Let's say he's fiery, and he's going to react. And Rodgers knows that he'll maybe react to this. Like it could be a bit of that. But Liam Scales, I'll look at a simple way because I'm a simple guy. I think Liam Scales has just got his reward for that gig at Ibrox. And he's in the Champions League squad, and he's earmarked as a possible left back if needed. And I forgot Hatate played left back against St Johnstone last year. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
So there is probably another option there, but I think this is a perfect storm for Rodgers, maybe. An undisciplined backup left back, and he's got a guy who's know what I'm doing so far, and he's went, well, look, Alexandro, I think you've got more ability than Liam Scales, but Liam Scales has put his head down, gave me a gig, done me well, you haven't. Mm-hmm. And it could be something as simple as that. Could be a bit of squad management there.
I can trust that player. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the thing, right? We're going to Rotterdam. I don't know if I know that some Acsom contributors will be over there, Kev. I'm not sure if you're one of them, but Rotterdam, we go to a game like that, and I heard yesterday going on about, getting a draw, etc. I'll tell you what, if you get a draw in Rotterdam, that is an unbelievable result as it stands. It's an unbelievable result. But what you need to get that result, Kev, is every single element of your team all working the way that you've set them out to do. The game plan has to be spot on. And in order for that to happen, every single element of that team has to be clicking all at the same time. They've all got to be doing exactly what you are instructing them to do. I don't think Burnaby's got it. I don't think he has that. He's erratic as a footballer. Talking about his head's gone or how's he going to react, etc. I just always think back to that Dundee United game where he was incorrectly penalised for handball on the ball and he gave away the penalty. He didn't know what was happening. It was a flailing arm behind him. People going about unnatural positions, Kev. Well, have you ever seen somebody trying to jump with their arms down the side of their body? It's impossible to get off the floor. You've got to use your arms to get the kind of elevation. And his head went after that to such a point he was pulled off at half-time. He couldn't get back in the game. He's not got the discipline for me. He's not got the mindset to be playing at this level. And when you go to the Champions League, I think that what happens is everybody needs to be tuned in for every second of the game. It's the margins, isn't it? And if you switch off for that one moment, you lose again.
Every European game, Paul, you can't rock up, and we can't afford 4 or 5 guys having a 5, 6 out of 10 in Europe. That's not good enough for us. You're looking, if we go to Rotterdam and get a result, what we're actually needing in Rotterdam is 11 guys to have an 8, 9 out of 10, and to actually get us a result. And you're probably right about Burnaby. He's probably a bit too flaky for that. So, you're probably right. But that's the margins in Europe. Rodgers is looking for players that he can trust.
Yep.
And that was the point I was maybe making about Scales. Scales has went to Rodgers. you can trust me to actually do certain things. Right? You look at the game against St Johnstone, maybe didn't suit him, but the defending suited him. The European game might suit him better because all he's got to do is defend and not try to create attacks or something like that. It'll be really interesting if he rocks up against Dundee. I mean, it'll be really. I says after the Rangers win, I said that'll probably be Liam Scales' Celtic highlight of his career. He'll always have that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
like Mike Conroy in the 1980 Scottish Cup final, played out of position, played out his skin. Yeah,
he will always have that moment, but I do not expect him to start at the weekend. I expect him to be in the squad. He'll maybe get a couple of wee appearances for the bench and that to try and keep
Nat Phillips.
I think you're looking at Phillips coming in to try and get a partnership going with Lager-Bielka. And I think Liam Scales has got his reward being in that Champions League squad for what he's done for Brendan over the pre-season and what he done at Ibrox. But I do not expect him to nail down a first-team berth. I do not expect him to have a massive career at Celtic. He's going to have a wee honeymoon period after playing so well at Ibrox. Then he will eventually go on loan. He'll eventually leave somewhere. But fair play to him. I think Rodgers has made a bit of a statement there. I didn't really think about that until you pointed out Bernabe's indiscipline. And Scales basically taking over in the squad. I didn't really think about it that way. No, I'm thinking about it. I think Rodgers kind of made a wee statement with the dropping of Bernabe. Mm-hmm. If you're not disciplined, you're not getting in. If you're not wearing shoes, you're not getting into the fullback.
Oh yeah, if you're wearing jeans, if it's no slacks. Every time you mention the fullback, I think of the kebab shop next door, Abracababra, best name ever. I'm not sure what the kebabs were like. Paddy Lavery. Didn't realise the Pet Shop Boys had a Celtic podcast on a Wednesday. Now, I know which one you're meant to be, which means I need to be Neil Tennant, right? Is that the way it's going to go here, right?
That's the way it has to go, right?
Yep, fair play, Paddy, fair play. I can't sing like him, but I must admit, I did go to see them once at the Playhouse in Edinburgh. And I love that song, Paninaro, which the brilliant magazine was named after as well. Check it out. Martin Nolan, due to UEFA squad rules, do we need to invest more money and time into the best Scottish players? You know this, man. It's a conversation Kev and I have had so many times. We are brilliant at producing Scottish players, Kev. We are fantastic at producing Scottish players. You and I spoke about it on Monday. Yet another one's just left the building, you know. Rocco Vata's the next one in line. Yes, I know he represents Ireland, but he's came through. He is classed as a homegrown player. He's came through our ranks, and he is a homegrown player. 2 goals for under-21s in his first appearance for the under-21s, Kev. That's a player who every time he steps up, he never looks out of place. Rocco Vata. Absolutely brilliant. Scored a double last night. And we need to keep him. This is the thing, Martin. I think we're good at producing players. We're just not very good at keeping them, Kev.
Aye, there seems to be a certain point now, and it seems to be getting earlier with these boys, that they're leaving at 16, 17, 18 rather than 2021. And that is something that I reckon, look, I think it's a Scottish football problem. I don't think it's just a Celtic problem. I think it's a Scottish football problem. I think that English teams are now looking up here because of the success of certain players doing in England. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I think also Italian teams are looking at Scottish players, maybe not the top level Italian teams, but the guys that went across there like Doig and Lewis Ferguson and Henderson and that, and knowing that they get a decent shift out there, guys. So they're looking at Scottish football again. Youngsters, these guys are going into academies that are playing at a far high. What can we offer them? What can we offer them at 16-year-old? Aye, we're going to play against Whitehill Welfare in the Scottish Lowland League.
I know.
It's no wonder. What can an English academy offer them? Well, you're going to play in the under-23 league. You're going to play in the under-18s against top quality guys who are elite level athletes, who are this and that, who in the Lowland League. There's guys there who have dropped up for junior and stuff like that. You look at Ben Doak. You look at the progress Ben Doak's made, and that's because he moved to Liverpool.
Absolutely.
That Ben Doak wouldn't be the Ben Doak if he would have stayed at Celtic.
No.
And we've
no.
got to get that into our heads. And I think the only way it changes, Paul, and I'm going to batter on about this, I think the only way this changes is if we leave Scottish football and
Right.
go into some sort of pan-European league where we're playing European teams on a weekly basis. And you can say to guys between 16 and 18-year-old, you can stay here and play the same level of guy that you'd be playing down in England.
I agree with you. I think the Scottish game limits what we can do as a football club at every single level, Kev, right? It's incredible that we are able to do anything at all in Europe because of the constraints. And I think one of the big issues in terms of the youth development is the fact that all we can offer them is a game in the fifth tier of Scottish football. Now, Celtic have done everything in their power, Kev, to get a team into the pyramid, and Scottish football and the teams vote against it time and time again to prevent them from progressing through the tiers. So there'll never be a promotion. They'll never allow a Scottish football team to start off in Tier 5, a B team, this is, a coach team, and progress up to championship level. They just won't allow it to happen. So the other option before we leave Scottish football, if indeed that ever happens, I think, is that you play a number of more competitive games. You withdraw from the Lowland League. I think Rangers have already done it. You withdraw out of that league, Kev, and you start playing. Now, I say competitive games, not even in a competition sense, but competitive in that you're playing a better level of opposition. So you think about all the under-23 teams in England, organise games with as many of those teams as you possibly can. How many fixtures does the Lowland League team play over a season? Right, you need to have that amount of fixtures. So you look at under-23 teams, you look at European sides at the same level, and you organise one-off games, and you get the competitive football, even though it's not in a competition. So I know that's like almost a double negative, but it's a bit of a, for me, contrarian view. But if you get a Man City under-23 team and you put that Celtic B team and play that, you're going to get a much better challenge against that levelist side. And then you can progress. And I remember that we were doing it for a while. I remember the very first time I ever went up to Lennoxtown, we were playing a lot of these types of games, one-off matches, Kev. Yeah, you need to organise it a lot more. It's not like you just have a fixture list, you've got to fill it in. But I think that maybe a next-gen competition in the middle of that against your Sporting Lisbon teams and all that, we've seen that before. That, for me, would be a much better way of having a developing youth team that you can say, right, you're playing competitive football. And another thing that might happen, Kev, and it's something that you're maybe even inviting, is you're saying to them, you're up against the best in Europe. So, the teams might want to actually come in for you. Will you end up losing more of the players? We possibly can't lose more than we're already losing. Stephen Ray, welcome back to the show. The European Champions League squad list highlights the lack of depth and quality we have in the homegrown status. Just going on the back of what we're talking about here. Our good youngsters are getting snapped up by bigger leagues, and the ones left behind aren't good enough. I fail to disagree. I can't disagree with that, because we spoke about it. It was Evan Easton on Monday. It was announced Sheffield United had signed the 18-year-old. I seen on his old fella's Facebook he was involved in a game. It was streaming live last night or the night before on YouTube. So you wish the players all the best, Kev, but I'd much rather that batch of players, and we're probably at a list now of about 15, maybe more. I'd much rather they were at Celtic developing here.
I would be. Of course we would be, but they didn't develop. That's the problem. This is Rocco Vata's problem as well. I mean, I notice there's quite a lot of the Celtic sites bumming him up the day. I mean, he scored 2 goals against San Marino. I mean, give me 2 weeks to get fit, and I think I could probably score 2 goals against San Marino. But is that the level of player that we're going to need to be bumming up now? The fact that he played for Ireland under 21s against San Marino. Hold on, wait a minute. You're talking about a guy that was the same age destroying Scotland last night. Like, in Bellingham. Right? I think we need to get a grip here and just realise that unless we move, unless we leave Scottish football to wallow in its own pig slurry, like, they didn't want a B team in the pyramid.
No,
fine.
No.
Fine. You can't have the A team. We're going away. Cheerio. Go and recalibrate yourselves and do what you want to do. Because, yes, we dropped points against Johnson. Yes, we'll drop points against some other mobs this season, Livingston, guys like that. We've all dropped points. That's the nature of league football. But nobody can argue that financially we are too big for Scottish football.
We've completed it. We've completed Scottish football.
We have completed Scottish football, and we're a hindrance to Scottish football now. And for us for Scottish football to improve and for football to improve, we've just got to let the capitalist greed take over and take it to its natural level, where it goes and it'll actually go bust. If the elite teams want to go and have a Super League, we're not going to stop it. Money's not going to stop that. And if there's going to be a mid-tier European league where I think Celtic would probably end up, that is going to happen. All these guys have got fixed ideas what's best for the game. No, by the way, that's gone now. We've got to just let it go to its natural conclusion. The money will eventually explode in Saudi Arabia and Europe and all of that, and everything will come back down. But you've got to let it go, because at the moment you're just creating haves and have-nots on a massive scale. I'm not bored. Let the top 18 elite clubs in Europe go away and play each other in Hong Kong and in Tennessee and places like that. When you go, they'll find an audience for it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to let clubs find their own level, and Celtic's level is no Scottish football.
The thing is, Kev, Scottish football has got this derby game, and they don't even know how to manage that. They don't even know how to deal with that. We're now in a situation where it's a laughingstock of a fixture, and that there's the fixture is dying, or it's already dead, because you can't even go and see it when the game's at Ibrox. And Scottish football's allowed that to happen. The authorities within Scottish football, the amateurish approach that they have, the inability for them to manage one football team in the game properly over a period of decades has resulted in Scottish football eating itself. And I felt that the pandemic and the aftermath of that would have been the perfect example for all these things to happen that you've described, Kevin. It's not happened.
One again, what's something else? It's just came to my mind there, right? We're all everybody says a European league. What about the guys that go everywhere, go week in, week out, week in, week out? We're getting shot at Scottish grunts.
Yeah.
Stuff them. I mean, there's already thousands and thousands of Celtic fans that are used to watching away games on screens anyway. So, yes, we'll maybe get away trips to Oslo, Trondheim, Stuttgart, places like that. And folk would make that trip. Folk would make that trip. We've probably got easier chance of getting a ticket, actually, going to a lot of these places. But Scottish football's already shutting us out. They're already shutting out our money. So
Exactly.
stuff them. I've got no sympathy for them anymore. I was always one that says that Scotland, that we've got a duty to Scottish football because we are a Scottish-Irish club. No anymore.
Do what's best for us as a football club. I get that.
And us leaving Scottish football would be best for Scottish football.
It'd be interesting to see what would happen if we did, Kev, because a lot of things would dry up in terms of sponsorship, broadcasting rights, and then it would be all right. So we've been an issue. We've been holding you back. Good luck, on you go. James Daly, to get higher caliber player means a higher wage structure. It's not just a matter of transfer fee. Absolutely, but if we manage the squad properly and the numbers within that bloated squad, Kev, then I'm always of the view that if there's 10 non-contributing players, I'd rather have 3 on higher wages than the 10 on 10 to 15 grand not contributing in any way, shape or form. And we've been in that situation for a long time. So I think we need to manage a squad better. Stuart Ramsey, afternoon Acsom, and all my fellow Tims, hail from a sunny West Midlands. Great to have you involved, Stuart. I want to hear, what does this jersey remind you of behind us? Which player? Do you like it? Has it aged well? And we've also got Jim Hanaway. Be a good show today, boys. Kev is on. You've got a fan, Kev. You have a fan.
I'm sure there's hundreds of other commenters who will actually disagree with you, Jim.
Afternoon troops, still buzzing for the Champions League. Despite a slightly underwhelming window, sometimes players aren't available. Work in progress, I think. Yeah, you've got to take that into account. I'm pretty sure that there will be a huge list of players that we wanted who fitted the criteria that we had set aside for a left back, for a goalkeeper. We've not been able to get the deals done, unfortunately. I know that these things are difficult, Kev, but when you go into a transfer window and you replace a holding midfielder like Moy with 2 other hold midfielders, when you replace a winger like Jota with 3 other wingers, or a centre-half like Starfelt with 2 centre-halves, you think to yourself, right, that's fine, but where's my left back? Where's my goalkeeper? And I think that that's the bit that becomes a frustration for me going into this. I think that what will happen, there's a comment in there The only reason I never brought it up is because there was a wee expletive in there, and for people on their lunch breaks or kids tuning in, I try my best not to swear. But what your point was that Rodgers has never done anything in Europe and wherever he's been. That was the point. I've got to disagree with that, and I keep going back to it. He took Leicester City to the semi-final of a European competition, Kev. He did. And it was Mourinho's Roma that knocked him out. Yes, it was Conference League. Would you take, Kev, this season, would you take, I'm going to ask the question, the semi-final of a European competition, regardless of what that competition was, would you take that?
Of course.
Of course you would. So it's not the fact that Rodgers has done nothing in Europe. For me, he's improved since he's gone to Leicester. He's improved as a manager. People might scoff at that at the moment. We've not got off to the best start. But there's a long way to go. Now, Keimatsu Kobayashi hasn't even had a look. Right. You use the Kobayashi example, you compare it to what you were talking about with Scales, Kev, and you think that there has been occasions where Kobayashi could have stepped up. He got an opportunity at Ibrox where he could have been that guy that Scales was the other week, and he wasn't up to the task. He's not shown enough to be in the squad for me.
He hasn't shown enough to be in the squad. That Ibrox game, I spoke about it in my blog last week. Completely different circumstances going into that game. It's a completely different team mindset going into that game. But you have a look, big CCV gets injured and you're going to Kobayashi. Right, by the way, you've got a nailed-on cup final spot here. If you produce whatever you've got in the next 6 or 7 games and we end up playing Iwata as centre-half and Kobayashi's on the bench, I think that says it all. He started off, he's only played 1 game for Rodgers against Marinos, and he looked a bit rough and ready in that game as well, and he was taken off injured, obviously. He hasn't really proved it. There's an argument there that probably Lager Bielka and Scales have done more in their opportunities than Kobayashi's actually done in all his opportunities. And I think that's a fair argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, the argument, I think, which is an interesting one, or the point, which is an interesting one, is that recruitment in season 2 is now affecting season 3. And that happens. Yes. There's a knock-on effect that wasn't great last season. The signings we brought in just now are yet to be proven. I think that some of them are going to be class. I think we've seen enough signs from the likes of Yang that he's a player. I think that Holm has shown signs that he can do a job. I liked what I've seen of Nawrocki. I've liked what I've seen of Lagerbielk. I'm looking forward to seeing Phillips.
Bottom line, Paul, injuries aside, if Kobayashi had actually proved himself in the 6 and 7 games that he got towards the end of last season, we would not have brought in 2 centre-halves in the summer. I think that goes without saying.
100%. You wouldn't be going out and spending, collectively, £7 million plus on 2 players if Kobayashi had filled that role effectively. Now, listen, it's all about opinions. We want to know your opinion. Let us know, if not in a live show, underneath the video in the comments section. Also, let us know about the Celtic tartan jersey behind me. What do you think of when you see that jersey? Probably not getting married, but that's what I remember. Now, Kevin Graham, you stepped up last minute, Liam Scales-esque, came in, performance to match. We're back to the real football at the weekend. Celtic will play Dundee, obviously. We'll cover that game half an hour before kick-off, half an hour after kick-off, the whole shebang. Who will be with me? Who knows? It might be Kevin McCluskey. It might also be Laura Bradburn. Who knows who will be available, but I'll certainly be in this seat covering the game as well. I've got to thank every single one of you for continuing to support a Celtic State of Mind. The numbers have been sensational over the pre-season, and long may that continue. And all that's left for me to say once again, Kevin Graham, thank you for joining me on a Celtic State.